Hi everyone, this is RJ from Emerald City Hockey. Yesterday we released a new feature on the site which I am very excited about, and that is the projected Seattle Kraken roster. We got a lot of good feedback from you guys, a lot of questions about some of the picks that we made, so I'm going to go through and explain the thinking behind each of these picks and kind of dig deeper into how this roster was built. So let's get started. Here we are on the projected Kraken roster page. And we'll start with the team facts section. Now, players by position, we have 18 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goalies. Now, this is a little different than the way the Vegas Golden Knights drafted their team in 2017. They chose 14 forwards, 13 defensemen, and those 3 goalies. Now, the reason that I've constructed this roster a little differently is I think the defensemen that we have are a little better in the quality department than what Vegas was dealing with. So we don't necessarily have to augment that lack of quality with quantity. Instead, we can try and make some good high upside bets on some young forwards that we'll see in a little bit. Moving on to salary cap. Team's cap hit is just a shade under $60 million, which is far and away the lowest in the NHL. But of course, that's a good thing. We have almost $22 million in cap space to work with. And I think we're going to need some of it right away. One thing we'll notice about this roster as we start to look through it is it's a little thin down the middle. We could probably use some more centers, and that'd be a good place for this cap space to go right away. I'm thinking maybe a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins or possibly Tyler Johnson from Tampa, but we're going to want to shore up that center position. This cap space is going to help us do it. One thing I like about this team's cap setup, beyond the initial numbers here, is the amount of flexibility they have going forward. Now, this team has only 5 contracts going beyond its inaugural season and only 1 going a year beyond that. So while we do have about $60 million committed to the first season, we only have about $15 million for the season after that and $4 million the year after that. On to the team averages section. So we have an average age of 26.07 years old. Now, that would be the 3rd youngest team in the NHL, so we have a pretty young roster that we're dealing with. Average height, 6'1.5". That would be the 5th tallest NHL team. Oddly enough, average weight, 195.4 pounds. That would be the 6th lightest team. So we have kind of a tall and light team. Now, I would attribute that maybe to the age of the team. It being a younger team, we might have some guys with maybe bigger frames that they haven't quite filled out yet. Average salary, just a tad under $2 million. Although that is influenced by the fact that we have 30 players here when only 23 will be on the actual roster. So don't put too much stock into that right now. And finally, players by country. This is a fun one. We have 15 Canadians. Yes, half the roster is from Canada. We also have 8 American players, 2 Swedes, 2 Finns, 1 Dane, 1 Russian, and 1 Czech player on the team. It's a little bit more North American heavy than the league averages. Of course, that isn't by design. That's just how it works out. Moving on to the roster itself, let's start with the forward group. Now, as mentioned previously, it is a little weak down the middle. We could probably use a few more centers, but I think you'll find that we have a lot of good, high upside young talent, especially on the wings. Starting off, we have the projected first captain in Seattle Kraken history, Joe Pavelski. He has been on fire so far this season, scoring at over a point per game rate, and is one of the most respected leaders in the entire NHL. That said, the Stars are going to have to make some difficult decisions cap-wise this offseason, and they may need to jettison Pavelski's $7 million cap hit in order to afford raises for Miro Heiskanen, Yoel Kiviranta, and others. Let's hope that the Stars' cap casualty can become the Kraken's gain. Next, from the Pittsburgh Penguins, we have Jared McCann. Now, it was pretty slim pickings on this Penguins roster. Initially, I couldn't really find many players that stood out. In fact, I even considered just drafting a UFA whose contract would expire a few weeks after the expansion draft and just being done with it. But McCann has played his way into consideration. He's got 10 points in 17 games, and his puck possession numbers are about as good as you're going to find on this Penguins team. At under $3 million for one season, the risk seemed worth it. Next, from the New Jersey Devils, we have Miles Wood. Now, the Devils are one of the teams I'm most excited about. They have 10 expansion-eligible players who are either 22 or 23 years old. But I'm going with Miles Wood here. He's a big physical winger with a scoring touch. In fact, he led the Devils in scoring before the team took a 2-week break because of COVID last month. And he's definitely slowed down over the past month after the teams come out of the break, which is why he has that red arrow there next to his confidence factor score. So he's still the pick here, but if he doesn't improve, one of the younger guys like maybe a Yanni Kuokkanen or Yegor Sharangovich might move into that spot. Next, from the Anaheim Ducks, we have Sonny Milano. Now you notice the confidence factor here is only a 4. That's not very high. It's tough to get a read on what the Ducks expansion draft situation is going to be like this summer. Clearly there's a lot of change ahead for the organization, and some of the guys who are taking up protection slots right now might not be on the roster after the trade deadline. So we've got Sonny Milano here. He's only played 6 games this year, no points in those 6 games, but he's a former first-round pick, 16th overall. Maybe the Kraken will see something they like and some upside they'll want to go for. Next, from the Boston Bruins, we have Anders Bjork. The Bruins are going to be an interesting situation. There's lots of talent on the team for the Kraken to choose from. Just at the forward position, you have Bjork, you have Andre Kasha, you have Craig Smith. Now, Bjork is the youngest and cheapest of the 3, which is why I have him as the preferred forward. Defenseman Jeremy Lauzon has played very well this season, but given the defense depth that we already have on this team, I've decided to go with the forward instead. That said, if Bjork doesn't start scoring at a higher rate, Lauzon could easily replace him on this list, which is why I have that confidence factor at only a 5. Next, from the St. Louis Blues, we have Sammy Blais. Now, like the Bruins, the Blues have a lot of options to choose from here. You've got Blais, Oscar Sundqvist, Zach Sanford, Ivan Barbashev, Vince Dunn, Nico Mikkola, all among the options. But I went with Blais because, in addition to being younger, he has an edge to his game that I think will be very valuable to the Kraken, especially in the playoffs. He's not afraid to push the boundaries of the game and instill some fear in the opposition by maybe laying a borderline hit here and there. The fact is, you need guys like that to win a Stanley Cup. I like him a lot. The reason the confidence factor here is so low is just because of all the other good options that the Kraken are going to have from St. Louis. Next, from the Ottawa Senators, we have Nick Paul. Now, of all the available Senators players, he's the one who really stands out to me. He's got 11 points in 27 games and brings a good mix of size and skill to the game. He even had a cool play the other day where he kicked the puck out of the zone after losing his stick. Look it up if you get the chance. People were calling him Kick Paul or Nick Pele. It was pretty funny. Next, we have perhaps my favorite player on this roster, Austin Wagner. Those of you who follow the blog will have seen my prediction that Austin Wagner will be a 20-goal scorer for the Kraken one day. So sorry if you've heard it before, but you're about to hear my Austin Wagner spiel. Austin Wagner is a unique player. He has all-world speed, elite speed. He can go stride for stride with Connor McDavid like it's nothing. And it seems like he gets a breakaway every other game. But the problem is he just can't finish. So all you have to do is teach him how to deke, and he's an instant 20-goal scorer. But for some reason, it seems like the Kings have all but given up on him. He's only playing about 10 minutes a night, which is the least among their regular forwards. And as of last game, he's back out of the lineup again. But hey, that's a good thing. It means he's less likely to be protected. So, Ron Francis, draft him. Next, from the Philadelphia Flyers, we have Nicolas Aube-Kubel. The Flyers will present some interesting options for the Kraken in the expansion draft. Right now, we have them exposing some pretty big-name players, Jakub Voracek, Shane Gostisbehere, but I think the Kraken would be wise to forego those big names and big salaries and take a guy like Aube-Kubel. He is rock solid defensively, and he's already playing some very tough minutes at only 24 years old. He also provides some scoring too, with 7 points in 21 games this season. Next, from the Winnipeg Jets, we have the subject of this week's scouting spotlight, Mason Appleton. He settled into a defensive role on the Jets' third line with Adam Lowry and Andrew Kopp, and the 3 of them have excelled. Appleton is in the 99th percentile in shot suppression this season, and he's chipped in some scoring too by going to the tough areas in front of the net. Look for that 6.5 confidence factor to rise even further if he keeps playing like he has. Next, from the Kraken's rival just to the north, we have Cole Lind. Originally, when looking at the Canucks, it seemed like goaltender Braden Holtby would be the obvious pick heading into the season, but Honestly, his play so far just hasn't been good enough to make the cut. Instead, we're going with Cole Lind, who has 8 points in as many games with the AHL's Utica Comets. At only 22, he still has a lot of upside left in his development. If he's left exposed, I feel very confident in the Kraken taking him here. From the Chicago Blackhawks, we have Brandon Hagel. Hagel's the most recent addition to our projected roster, being added after Brent Seabrook's retirement. Before that news, we had the Kraken picking defenseman Connor Murphy from the Blackhawks. But with Seabrook's protection spot opening up, the Blackhawks will be able to protect both Murphy and Nikita Zadorov, meaning the Kraken will have to look elsewhere. Hagel has 7 points in 23 games this season and could be a fine bottom six option. Next, from the Columbus Blue Jackets, we have Kevin Stenlund. Now, when looking at the Blue Jackets' protected list, you can see that 6 of their 7 forward spots are already occupied by players who are pretty much sure things to be protected, leaving that final spot open to either Eric Robinson or Stenlund. And really, you pretty much can't go wrong with that choice. Stenlund brings both size and skill to the center position, and he's looked pretty impressive as part of Columbus's forward group. Plus, young Swedish center taken from the Blue Jackets in the expansion draft with hair like that. Now, I'm not saying that Stenlund is the next William Karlsson, but we can dream, can't we? Next is Evgeny Svechnikov of the Detroit Red Wings. And he's got a pretty good pedigree. He's a former first-round pick, 19th overall in 2015, and his brother Andre is a star for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, it looks like he may finally be starting to live up to his potential. He's got 4 points in 4 games this season. But he does have my lowest confidence factor of anyone on the roster with just a 3.5. And the reason for that is this Red Wings team. The roster's so thin that it feels like anyone who impresses at all will just play their way into being protected. It's hard to get too confident about him when that's the case. But if he is exposed, I would like to see the Kraken take a flyer on him. Next, from the New York Islanders, Otto Koivula. Now, with only 12 games of NHL experience, Koivula might seem like a bit of an off-the-board pick here, especially since we're projecting the Islanders to expose some players that can help at the NHL level right away, like Josh Bailey or Nick Leddy. But the reason I shied away from those two is I felt our blue line was strong enough as is without having to add Leddy, and Bailey's contract term of 3 more years when he's already 31 kind of scared me off. Koivula is a big power forward who's put up some decent scoring numbers in the AHL, and I think he'd be an exciting prospect to have in the system. Next, from the San Jose Sharks, is Alexander True. Now, this pick does have some Seattle ties. Thunderbirds fans might remember him from his 3 seasons with the team in junior. And he's gone on to become an intriguing prospect for the Sharks. He made his season debut last Monday, and he's looked good in his limited ice time. He played on the penalty kill and had some quality scoring chances despite just playing north of 6.5 minutes. Keep an eye on him to see if he can get back into the Sharks lineup soon and hopefully get some more ice time. Up next, from the Tampa Bay Lightning, Matthew Joseph. The defending Cup champions are stacked with forward talent, and plenty of that will be exposed to the Kraken this summer. Andre Palat, Alex Killorn, Alex Volkov, Yanni Gourde. I have 8 forwards on my target list for Tampa. But the one I went with is Matthew Joseph. He has 9 points in 23 games while averaging under 11 minutes of ice time this season. He's looked great, and it seems like the only thing that's holding him back is just being stuck behind a bunch of really talented players. But that's how it goes when you play for the defending Cup champs. The Kraken will happily take him here and give him a bigger role. And rounding out the forwards, we have Colin Blackwell from the New York Rangers. I'll be honest, I had never heard of Colin Blackwell before this season. And doing my preseason scouting for this, he didn't really jump off the page. 27-year-old with only 33 NHL games, nothing to see here. But he's had a breakout season with the Rangers, and he's been a utility player, kind of playing up and down the lineup and even on the power play. He's only 5'9", but you wouldn't think of him as undersized given how he plays. He's quickly become a Rangers fan favorite too. Just look him up on Twitter. Fans love the guy. I think he'd be a good depth option for the Kraken here. Moving on to the defenseman. I think the defense core is the real strength of this team. You've got good puck movers all the way from 1 to 6, plus a lot of talented younger players who are ready to step into the lineup right away. I really do think this blue line could be one of the better ones in the NHL. And we'll start with Mark Giordano. Like we have Joe Pavelski as our veteran leading the forward group, Giordano's going to lead the defense. He's been the Flames captain since 2013, and even though he's 37, he still leads the Flames in ice time. Luckily for the Kraken, it does look like he will be exposed in the expansion draft. The Flames have a trio of younger, cheaper defensemen in Noah Hanifin, Rasmus Andersson, and Chris Tanev that I think will all be protected over Giordano. I think Giordano would be a great option to lead this blue line and serve as alternate captain. Next is Matt Dumba from the Minnesota Wild. Now, the Wild are in a tricky situation. They have a league-high 5 no-move clauses, including 3 on defense, which leaves Matt Dumba as the odd man out if they go with that 7-3-1 protection option. So I want to explain my confidence factor of a 5 here. If Dumba is exposed, I am certain the Kraken will take him. He's a great two-way defenseman with, I think, sneaky captain potential once Pavelski retires. He'd fit really well within the Kraken organization. But I just don't see the Wild allowing him to walk for nothing. They could convince one of their guys with no move clauses to waive it for the draft, and even if they can't do that, why let Dumba go for nothing when you could just trade him elsewhere and get a good return? That's why we keep hearing rumors about a potential Dumba trade. But until that happens, he's the pick here. Next, from the Colorado Avalanche, we have Devon Toews. This pick is a lot like the Dumba pick. If Toews is exposed, I'm certain he'll be the pick here. I love his game. He's solid defensively, he's a good puck mover, and he's got a rocket shot from the blue line. But, just like Dumba, the Avs have a no-move clause problem. If you look at our protected list for Colorado, you see Eric Johnson here with his no-move clause, Cale Makar, and Sam Girard, leaving Devon Toews as the odd man out. So if Eric Johnson were to waive his no-move clause, Toews could slide into that defense spot. Will that happen? At first, I didn't really have an idea either way, but recent rumors have come out suggesting the Avs are shopping Ryan Graves so they don't have to lose him in the expansion draft. Now, that would only be the case if Toews could be protected. So that tells me the Avs think that's probably likely, hence the red arrow on my confidence factor. And from the Nashville Predators, we have Mattias Ekholm. This pick's a tough one to predict just because there could be a lot of change coming for the Predators given their disappointing season. We'll see what the deadline brings, but as the roster is currently built, I have them going with the 7-3-1 protection option, leaving Ekholm exposed. He's a big veteran blue liner who's hard to play against in front of the net. Every team can use guys like that. I think he'll make the Kraken that much tougher to play against. Next, from the Florida Panthers, Markus Nutivaara. So there weren't too many good options here as far as Panthers skaters. Nutivaara has had a disappointing season so far, but so have some of the other available players for the Panthers. I actually have a higher confidence that the Kraken will pick a player who, because of the rules I'm using of no UFAs, I couldn't pick, and that is Chris Driedger. He's clearly been the Panthers' best goalie this season and looks like a real NHL starter. So while I can't take him here, I think the Kraken will make a run at him with this pick. Next, from the Toronto Maple Leafs, we have Travis Dermott. So the Leafs don't have a ton of expansion draft options here either. There's almost no one to speak of at forward, and on defense, it seems like it's going to come down to Justin Hall or Travis Dermott, with the Leafs only being able to protect one. Right now, it seems like Hall has supplanted Dermott in that top 4 role, so Dermott will be the guy left to the Kraken here. And from the Buffalo Sabres, Will Borgen. So right off the bat, we see that confidence factor of 4. The Sabres are a mess, and trades are certainly coming. So it's hard to be confident in anyone here, given how much the roster could change in a month. Borgen's a decent young defenseman, and he's got some size, and could be a good bet as a depth guy. But look for this one to change once the Sabres start selling off pieces before the trade deadline. Next is one of the most hyped players on this projected roster, Carolina Hurricanes defenseman Jake Bean. The Hurricanes have insane blue line depth, and the Kraken will be able to take advantage of that. If we look at the Hurricanes protection list here, they have Jakob Slavin, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea, Jake Bean, Dougie Hamilton, if he re-signs, he's a pending UFA, Jake Gardner, and Hayden Fleury. So the Hurricanes can only protect 3 of those 7. So the Kraken are going to get a good blue liner out of this no matter what. Right now I have the Hurricanes protecting Brady Shea. He has much higher ice time than the other options, and they lean on him a lot more heavily than Bean, Gardner, or Fleury. So that leaves Jake Bean exposed. He's a former first-round pick and has looked really impressive in the AHL and in his NHL action this season. His vision from the point is excellent. He could easily be the Kraken's best defenseman in a couple years. Finally, we have Oilers defenseman Caleb Jones. Now, the reason my confidence factor is so high here is that as the protected list is currently constructed, he's the only younger NHL regular here. Turris and Archibald are past the point where they're going to get any better, and Lagesson hasn't really broken into the lineup yet. Caleb is the younger brother of Blue Jackets defenseman Seth Jones, and his possession numbers have been pretty darn good this season. He looks like the best option here. Moving on to the most difficult position in hockey, the goalies. So this template is how I think the Kraken will build their goalie tandem. One veteran option who's had strong numbers recently, and a couple younger up-and-coming goalies in their mid-20s who may be able to be starters soon, all while not spending too much money on the position. I'm a big believer that you don't want to have too much cap space in net, and this setup seems especially cost-efficient. And we'll start off with our veteran netminder option, Jake Allen. Now, I've been looking forward to explaining this one. Of all the picks, this is the one that people have commented on the most. A lot of Habs fans in the mentions, and I love that. Love the energy. So let's start with the protected list, which I've gotten some comments about too. I have Philip Danault as unprotected here. Now, reports are that Danault and the Habs have broken off contract talks until after the season, and they seem to still be a ways apart. So until something moves on that front, I'm going to assume he's headed to free agency and therefore won't be protected. On to the defense. Now, I've gotten some comments saying that Shea Weber won't be exposed. But if you're Mark Bergevin, why wouldn't you expose him? You know the Kraken aren't going to touch that contract given the term left on it, so why not free up another protection spot? I mean, remember, that thing goes until he's 40. Ron Francis is not going to want to be on the hook for that, especially with a goalie like Jake Allen available here. He's outplayed Carey Price at every turn this season. He's got a .921 save percentage and is 14th in goals saved above average. He'd be a great part of a Kraken goalie tandem and seems like an easy pick here. Our first younger goalie option is Adin Hill of the Arizona Coyotes. WHL fans will remember him from his time with the Portland Winterhawks, and he's got more Pacific Northwest ties. He's from Comox, BC on Vancouver Island, and he even wore a Seahawks hat when backing up during a playoff game last year. Think he wouldn't like to come play in Seattle? He does have my highest confidence factor on this roster at 9.5, and really this pick just makes so much sense. There are hardly any other options on this Coyotes roster. I mean, Tyler Pitlick, some AHL forward. I'd rather have my potential goalie of the future here. He's played really well in a small sample size this season with a .930 save percentage through 2 games. But we're about to see a lot more of him because Coyotes starter Darcy Kemper is week to week and will miss some time with an injury. Keep an eye on Adin Hill. It sure looks like he's going to be on the Kraken next season. Last but not least, we have Vitek Vanacek of the Washington Capitals. He won the NHL Rookie of the Month in January and has an impressive 11-5-3 record so far this season. I think he's a good, young, high-upside bet to round out this goalie group. But the question I get asked most about this pick is, why not TJ Oshie? Well, if you look at our projected protection list for Washington, you can see that TJ Oshie is marked as protected with a 60% probability rating. And the reason for that is Oshie's still playing at a high enough level that I don't think the Capitals will want to leave him exposed when they're still in the middle of their Stanley Cup window, especially not with the other options being Richard Panik, Garnet Hathaway, or Carl Hagelin. None of those three really seem worth protecting over Oshie at the moment. So given that Oshie is not an option here at the moment, Vanacek is the pick. So there it is. That's our initial projected Seattle Kraken roster. It's been awesome to see all the interest you guys have taken in it and the great discussion and debate over each of the picks. And of course, this is a live updated roster, so check in often. I can guarantee there will be plenty of changes made to this, especially as we get closer to the trade deadline and the expansion draft. I'm going to continue to post these videos explaining the changes we make and the thought process behind them. And please continue to let us know what you think. Is there a pick you disagree with? A certain player you'd love to see on the Kraken? Let us know in the comments. And make sure to follow us on Twitter at Emerald City HKY, here on YouTube, Emerald City Hockey, and on the website, emeraldcityhockey.com. Thanks everyone for watching, and go Kraken.